Welcome everyone to this very special panel discussion on ETRise. Uh, we are almost on the World MSME Day, which is on 27th. And so the panel discussion is uh, on the 2 or 3 days before the National MSME Day. On the economic front, COVID-19 has been unprecedented. It has forced companies, big and small, to reinvent processes, relook its presence, and figure out new ways to be productive and relevant. What has been equally important is the fact that almost all changes and challenges have come suddenly with little or no warning. In these very difficult times, there are businesses, however, that have innovated to fight their way through. We've all heard of train coaches being converted to hospital ward for patients and distilleries now making hand sanitizers. We have with us four such examples today which represent changes businesses must undertake from four very different sectors. We have with us today Chetna Gala Sinha, founder, chair, Mandeshi Foundation; Tanvi Malik, founder, Fab Ali and India;
Hi.
Sanjay Likha, managing director, Alpine Apparel; Anurag Katriyar, president, National Restaurant Association of India, NRAI.
Hi.
Uh, Welcome everyone, and good to have you all here. And before we start, a quick note for all our viewers that right after this session, we have a small session with Meghna Surya Kumar, CEO of Credit Watch, on how borrowing and lending models will change during this pandemic. Raising funds is such a huge issue at the moment, and I think this will be worthwhile for you to stick around. Uh, so, Prasanna, let me come to you first. How have the last 3 months been? You are in a sector where you work with a lot of micro entrepreneurs. What has been your experience in the last 3 months?
So thanks for inviting me. And actually, it's very interesting. In March, when it was just a beginning, there was a there was a fear, and at the same time, there was a lot of people when didn't know how are we going to react. So people were planning themselves more at a personal level. When I say that, what I mean is that we have a radio, and on radio, when we were talking about physical distancing and all those things, these are very new to India. So, physical distancing, washing hands, using sanitizer, using mask, particularly in the villages, those were the debates. Then came lockdown. Then so many people from Mumbai to village coming back, and then that whole euphoria of corona comes in the village, that okay, we can also get it. It's not that you do all these things and you are going to escape. That is second. And third, which I think is very, very important, is that losing your daily income. Everything is stopped. There is a lockdown. People, those who are on a daily income or a daily wages, they just don't have any work. And in our area, particularly in the villages, you will see that men have lost the job. So the whole majority, many women are doing it. Either it is street vending, either it is going home to home and selling some things, either it is whatever. They are trying to find the job because men are actually finding it difficult. And lastly, I would come that, in all this middle of it, you will see one positive thing is that the income generation and growth in agriculture sector has risen. And that is because it has not been affected so much. And fortunately, we had a rain monsoon in time. So in my area, if I move around, I see that in the fields, farmers are there, women are working, monsoon in time, and sowing has been done. So having this country, you see different, you have like different screens everywhere. But yes, one thing is very clear, and that is, particularly I feel that women will reinvent a lot in rural India.
Wonderful. Uh, Sanjay, if I can come to you, you are in the leather sector. What's been your experience in the last 3 months?
Yeah, thank you, Pran, for having me here today. See, the last 3 months have been quite a challenge, primarily because, in our sector, in the leather sector, all the units tend to be mostly in the MSME segment. And as an MSME, we have limited resources. Um, and to be able and to have to handle the complete fixed costs during this period with payment of wages, salaries, rentals, and so on, almost with zero revenues coming in, has been quite a challenge. But having said that, we've all learned to move on and have to come up with solutions on how we are going to handle this. So I would say that the last 3 months, I have, for one, spent a lot of time getting used to the new normals, brainstorming with our teams on trying to understand what we could do to be able to come out of this stronger. Because eventually there is a lot of opportunity which will which will arise for every industry. It's a matter of, I'm quite sure it's a matter of time, and we have to weather it out and reach and see that we survive during this time. So during this period, there's been a lot of thought that has gone in to trying to understand on how we can do things better, how we can improve processes, how we can cut costs, how in a industry like ours, which is primarily a labor-intensive industry, on how we can optimize the labor and get the best results from the same. So this has been more or less what we've been doing, and I think going forward there is, of course, as I said earlier, there's a lot of opportunity. We are working on that, and I would like to come back to that in a few minutes. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Sanjay. Tanvi, if I can come to you, what has been your experience over the last 2.5, 3 months?
Hi, first of all, thanks for having me here. In terms of our experience, so you have to, fashion is a complete discretionary spending category, right? And plus, the two brands that we have, which are Fab Ali and India, both are, mid-market, mass premium brands, and they don't fall into, your absolute necessities, and they're definitely not luxury. So that mid-market is the one that gets hit first in every recession or any black swan event that comes in the picture. That's the market that gets hit first. So that's what happened starting mid-March. That's at a time where malls started shutting down, and our offline retail, which comprised historically about 60% of our business, came crashing to zero within 5 or 6 days, because all malls and large format stores shut shop first. Meantime, online, with our own website and marketplaces such as Myntra, Amazon, Flipkart, was rallying for both brands. But one is that the demand started going down, because when people started understanding the reality, the thing about COVID is that it's so unprecedented, and we only, as a global economy, we only had, at the time that it started, we only had the example of China. And that's not really saying anything, considering there was a lot that was obscured, to put it mildly, in that region, right? Information was, everybody was doing it for eating for the first time. So that's how consumption also panned out. In the beginning, consumers were, thinking of it as a short-term sort of an event where, people were just transferring their shopping pattern from offline to online. And towards towards lockdown, between lockdown 1 and 2, a lot more happened. People started losing their jobs. People started understanding, looking at US, Italy, and Spain, and all of these that were, ahead of us in terms of the curve, that this is an event that is going to be, that is going to span 6 months, 9 months. We don't know that. Like it's that unprecedented. So April and May consumption actually hit rock bottom. We were not allowed to before the whole concept of red, orange, and green zones came in, we were not allowed to. We're not an essential category. Fashion is not considered essential, so we are not allowed to anyway operate our online operations as well. It's only in June that restrictions have been lifted. Meantime, what we did in April and May, like a lot of Sanjay has also mentioned, we worked a lot on processes. We streamlined some of our operations. We added more categories and more on that as we move along in our conversation. But in June, early June, we finally started being able to dispatch across and we started our online operations. And thankfully, I think because of the 3 month period, there was, there's this whole concept called revenge shopping, and there's a pent up demand that is exercised. So the first 15 days of June have been good for us online, and offline is actually, I mean, that is the one that will probably be the slowest to recover because people are not comfortable. People are very fearful about stepping out of their comfort zones. So that we do have our stores open. A lot of malls have opened up, but footfalls are negligible at this point of time. And we don't expect that to change for at least a couple of months.
Right. Anurag, if I can come to you, you are another sector where there's been a lot of pain. Like there is revenge shopping, is there revenge eating? What is happening?
Well, I wish there was something called revenge eating. I mean, eating is a matter of pleasure. But if I have to look back at the last 3 months, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. This has been the most unprecedented and one of the toughest times that we have all seen in our lives professionally and personally, honestly. Personally, there could still be some solace of spending time with your family. But professionally, it has been a complete whitewash. In our sector, while home delivery was allowed, it was very difficult to operate because there were timing restrictions, there were no public transport, and there is generally a problem with the consumption. People are not happy consuming food right now because they foresee danger because of several hands which the food goes through before it reaches your plate. Some of it could be misplaced, but by and large, I think people will err on the side of caution than risk under the circumstances. So what have we done in last 3 months is very short. We have kept on with our advocacy efforts with the various state governments, the government of India, and we have been trying to develop various things. We have taken some tech initiatives of our own, of creating our own NRAI platforms. Hello, I think.
I think we're just getting some disturbance in the end.
म्यूट करना
You can
पड़ेगा हाँ
continue.
कुछ okay so we I think it's a noise. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just to continue, so that is how life was going on. We had another issue. Most of our stocks was perishable. So before you know, they disappeared. So that's another whammy. We are one of the largest employees of human capital in India, second only to agriculture. So obviously we had too many people problem to face. So we continued with everything. We have learned to live with it as everybody has to. And we also utilized this time in doing something which was little close to our hearts. It was something called Feed the Needy, wherein we leveraged our food production infrastructure to serve almost 7 million meals to people in need. These are migrant laborers, daily wage earners, spread across 4 cities of Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, and Kolkata. So yeah, we kept doing things and we continue to do so. We are launching a bunch of SOPs going forward, and at the same time hoping that the sector will open up soon. Consumption is not in our control, but at least we can start our shops.
Wonderful. Let's get to the crux of our discussion today. Priscilla, if I can come to you first, what are the, I mean, like we've discussed that, it's an unprecedented situation where companies and businesses have had to reinvent themselves. What is it that you have seen with the entrepreneurs that you have worked with? Most of these are not, manufacturers in their own very right. What is it that you have seen?
So, especially after the lockdown, I mean, it happened that many of our women who are street vendors, they were not allowed to sell their produce. Many of the women are in catering businesses. They just lost their business. But I would like to narrate an example. A lady, Savita, now she was actually making a school uniforms, and she got the information that schools are not going to start, so we canceled the order. And Savita was prepared with everything that she's going to stitch the school uniforms. And then when the order was cancelled, her husband lost the job because of the lockdown. She was like, how am I going to manage and feed my family? And so in middle of it, she decided that I have a material. Why don't she was looking in, like, this is on 24th March. She came on the street, made some cotton mask, like these, and she came on the road and started selling it, because those days even masks were not there in the market, in the shop. And within a day she could sell nearly more than 200 masks. Now that was a hope for her, and she decided that, you know what, maybe I switch and I start making masks. But not only that, Savita was like such a hope for everybody, that because she was getting many, many orders for the masks, so she approached Mandeshi Foundation and Mandeshi Bank, and she said that I may need more women to make the mask. But then you cannot travel. How would you get the cloth? How would you get the machinery? But in this lockdown, we managed to get the cloth from Ichalkaranji. We ordered 3 lakh meters of cloth material, got it, and it was not easy. It was a lockdown. You have to go online, get the passes, get your vehicle to go there, get that cloth. Then on machinery, Savita would cut the pieces, and then she started distributing. And that also on phone, she said she would go to the villages, give those pieces, and in morning at 9 she would give, and at 12 she would collect the mask. And that whole quality control is such a big thing, and how do you do it with this distances and lockdown? You cannot meet. So she created a virtual course on mobile, and then she circulated on WhatsApp video. And and then she started saying why she is rejecting the mask. So they also maintain the quality control. And I'm so proud to share with you today that more than 300 our women have made more than 500,000 masks. And the surprising part is that there is no land, there's no big manufacturing unit, there is no, everybody is at their home and making these masks. They are aggregated, dispatched, managed, sanitized, everything is done. And it's not only industries are buying it. And I'm also glad to share with you that Chennai Textile Association has licensed the cloth material. Cipla is helping us in the quality control. So what I'm trying with by narrating Savita's example is that Savita has actually, and these women have reinvented the process of manufacturing. They are using technology, they are using machinery, they are aggregating it, and they are selling it. It's going to the clients. And at the same time, Mandeshi Bank, wherever they required finance, so Savita did a hire purchase and bought a two-wheeler. Another friend, she bought a cutting machine. So what I'm saying is that yes, finance and the digital part, all this was done so perfectly, and it had to be processed continuously. So women like Savita today, they have produced the mask. And now, why I say that, because of the MSME day which is about to come, that it is important to reinvent the processes also, because these women are not looking back. Every woman is earning more than 500 rupees per day, which before lockdown they was not earning so much. So, and I'm glad that Mandeshi Bank has been able to, like, cumulatively have been able to provide 400 crores of lending done, not during the lockdown totally, but during lockdown also. The gold loan was a big thing because it was a liquidity. You immediately want to start a business. So, where do you find the working capital? So women came forward, did the gold loan, took the loan and started the business. So we see here on one side, on the manufacturing thing, the mask is a big thing. And if you want, I mean, the other thing is very much about the food grains. Our women are making dals, and they make one of the best quality dals in Marathwada, Latur. And these are hand pounded rice, hand pounded dals. And women bought the machinery of packaging these dals and are going to the societies, getting the entry passes and selling that. What I'm trying to say is that in lockdown, when they lost all the jobs, but they had one thing, and that is courage to go on the street and sell it. And they did it. And today they have been able to retain their incomes. Not only that, but they have become the main bread earner of the family.
Wonderful. I think courage to go out and sell things, especially in situations like this where you have to do much more with so much less. You have to be resourceful and innovative and creative despite institutional voids and resource constraints. Uh, if we can come to you, Sanjay, what is it that you did in your sector, in your business, to get over or continue through this pandemic?
See, I think the most important thing that that we did do over this period was to was what we are doing today, which is to use digital methods to communicate. We are essentially in the export business, and having said that, a very important part of our business is to stay in touch with the customers, is to keep making new offerings to them, keep showing them what developments are happening, what newness we have to offer, new fashion, new design. This has traditionally always happened with face-to-face meetings. And during this period, the use of digital technology or video conferences, it showed us that a lot of this that we had been spending huge amount of money traveling overseas, showing samples, that this could really be done so nicely in such a simple method. And the acceptance from both sides, our side, the customer side, that has happened during this period. The customer always wanted to look at the sample, feel it, talk about it, and now that is happening digitally, and it is something I think that is here to stay. I would like to add a little more onto this, that today what we are doing is to develop samples instead of sometimes even developing a physical sample, to develop a sample, a 2D sample or a 3D sample digitally, and get an approval on that very, very quickly. So this is actually reducing the time that we were taking to finalize a process, a business. It has really brought that down. As an example, we work for a shoe major, and traditionally we would have, if we would have meetings to discuss colors for the next season, and this would be normally a 4-day process in which the finalizations would happen. I am told by my team this time that we have been able to do it over a single 40-minute video call, because everybody is there, everybody is available, everybody is looking at the same things at the same time, So instead of it moving from one cabin to the next, to the next, to the next, it is all happening across right away. So everybody's involvement is there. I mean, it's happening beautifully. It has brought down the time to a very, very major extent. Another thing that we have done during this period in terms of manufacturing is that once we started relooking at how we would lay out the factories now in view of the social distancing, you see, it brought up new challenges of trying to create the same amount of production within the same space, but maintaining a certain social distance, which was earlier not available. So when we started relayouting the factories, when we started looking at creating the social distance, we also realized that this required for us to rework on the processes and also on the skill set of the workers. Traditionally, we've always had single skill worker on a job. Now we realize that we need to create smaller lines, meaning that if there was 30 people doing a particular production line, we have to do it because there's a limitation on space. So you now need to do it with maybe 15 people. And if you have to do that, then you need that each of your workers should be able to handle not only one single skill, but multi-skill. So multi-skilling has become extremely important, and it is something that I think is here to stay, and it will eventually, in my opinion, it will change at the way we look at manufacturing, more so, of course, in the manufacturing, which is labor oriented, but a lot of change will come around there. Similarly, I would say that the approvals of samples. I'm going back to my first point for a quick second. Where I was talking of digital things, but today, even when we have a sample which is ready for what we call a pre-production sample, which would go to the customer, get approved before we could take it on onto final production, and we would normally have to wait the transit time between us and the customer, and a response time from there. So, which would be, let us say, generally speaking, 4 to 6 days. Today, we are getting approvals from our customers on pre-production samples, on everything immediately. I mean, it is digital. I mean, everything is happening so quickly that eventually this will change the way that production, especially in the fashion and fashion accessories business, as Tanvi mentioned, you see there is a certain need for being very, very quick about responses in a business like this. And that, I think, is something that this COVID situation has brought around and given to us during this period. Right. So I'm being absolutely positive. I think we have more things positive that will come out of this situation. And we will eventually, of course, live through the negatives and move on. Thank you.
Right. Live through the negatives. Tanvi, what is it that you are trying to do at the moment? How are you trying to be different?
Okay, so I think I can break this down into 3 parts. First is, what is the consumer expecting from fashion at this point of time? Fashion is intrinsic. It is, I mean, what you're wearing is always going to be a statement, regardless of, whether we're going through a recession or whether, whether the tides are up or down. Demand will slow down, but fashion is a category, apparel is a category that's never going to not sell. So at this point of time, one was to read what the consumer is requisiting from us. One is masks. So that was something that we realized in March itself, because as consumers, you were suddenly seeing that everybody needed a protective face garment, face mask. I'm not even getting into the N95s and the N99s and all of those things. We all need one protective, layer or to put, so that like one can step out comfortably, or just be in any situation without being extremely anxious. So the moment we could get our permits on, and this is something we started as early as April, when we were in the throes of the harshest lockdown. The moment we could get exceptional permits in, we started, with one range of masks, and we started retailing them via our website. Thankfully, we got permits to open our warehouse so that we could do our dispatching, and also, because masks were classified as essential, as necessities, we got permit to dispatch them across the country. So that was the first quick like range 25 styles that we brought out within I think 15 days, and we not only did we start selling them on our website, we the channel partners that we work with, such as Myntra, Amazon, Nykaa, we started retailing there as well. Plus, meantime, we also started working on the B2B segment, which is typically not something that we've done. And that's the thing about COVID. It forced you to think of good, strong revenue upsurges, which were completely out of the box. As a B2C, as a direct to consumer brand, we've never looked at B2B in any serious way. Bulk orders, wholesale, that's not for us. We've communicated with customers directly. But in this case, we did that. We are live with Big Basket. We are retailing. We're almost on the verge of being live with some online pharmacies like 1mg and PharmEasy and all of that. So that was that out of box, very quick thinking that we had to do. The other was on the call line. Now, this is not relevant to April and May. This is more relevant to right now, which is now, as I said, fashion is not going to, consumption of fashion is not going to, it may go down, but it's never going to go away. But what is the consumer looking for? And that's something that, like, for brands like us, that's changed completely from being trendy and current and all of those things that like have been the pillars of our DNA, of our product DNA, to being stylish, comfortable, timeless, to being mindful. People want to invest in something that they will probably see themselves wearing for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. That is the change. People are consuming less, but they are consuming better, more consciously. And there is a lot more focus on, because like all of you mentioned, meetings and Zoom meetings, and that people suddenly realizing that that is actually a more productive way of being, not just that, necessity is the mother of invention, but it's actually more productive. Like, you don't need to align travel times. You don't need to, get like everybody's attention at different points of time. You don't need to go through multiple layers. So all of this has basically made work from home viable. And work from home viable means that there is a lot of attention on dressing that is keyboard up, right? Like that is waist up dressing. So I'm getting a little more detailed right now, but that is actually a pretty huge emerging category for us, which is classic top wear. And we've built a line for that. And on the other side, comfort wear, which is not something we focused on. Nightwear and comfort wear, things that you can lounge around in all day. You can get on a call with your, team and your bosses and your employees all across the day. But you can also just sit and be in it while you're working and, spending time at home. So these 3-4 things have just given us a very different focus on product than what we used to have. Then the second part of my 3 parts would be focus shift from offline to online. Now, that is something that's not been a huge challenge for us at all, because that's our roots. Fab Ali and India both started as online brands first, and then moved to being omnichannel. Offline was second for us, online was first. But just purely by the footprint of how big offline retail is in the country, offline has been traditionally stronger for us. In the last couple of years, it's become stronger for us. So we've just completely changed focus right now to developing more and more, refining our online experience more. So what we're doing is that, you're on our website, we are curating our product lineups, our, cataloging, browsing experience as per customers' affinities and what behavioral patterns. Like, for example, if you come on our website and you have a tendency to look at like black dresses, then how do we know that it's you that's come onto our website, and how do we populate like 10 more black dresses for you? Because the thing about the internet is that there are a lot of options, but like brands like us, what we need to do is we need to solve for the problem of plenty. So curation and understanding customers through artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's something that we've really focused on in this period. And thirdly, I think fundamentally on making more retail streams for us, like so home shopping, for example, something that we've never touched on because we've always had like offline and online traditional modes to work with. But we've started this module called India by Appointment, wherein like people basically come to our stores only, we speak to our customers, they select a range of products, they either come to our stores on special appointment, or we send someone across to visit and take with them whatever they are, whatever the customers have fixed and whatever they picked out. So new models, new pivots of retailing have emerged in this period as well, and all of this has actually come together to, in fact, make us stronger. These were processes that we needed to work on, but we were running at such a pace operationally that that there was no time and bandwidth to get to that. But this research has actually made us prioritize this business, and we're actually building for the longer term now, building for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down.
Wonderful. Great. Anurag, if I can come to you, you are doing some interesting stuff. You and others in
Yeah, I mean, somebody said necessity is the mother of invention. When nothing is working, we need to do something different to just stay alive. And I think that's what we are doing. I think, the way I look at going forward, while there are a few things which I call your back-end retooling, things like bringing down your expenses, cutting down your logistics, everything and anything that is going to be a part of the new normal. We are working with a very clear-cut thought, and I like the optimism of other panelists when they say that things will be back to normal in a few months. I personally don't foresee that happening in F&B because unless there is an antidote or a vaccine for this virus, it will not be the same anytime soon. It is not going to happen. So while we do all that, on the other hand, I think merely opening a restaurant or a mall is not going to kickstart the business for you. The business will kickstart with consumption. And for ensuring consumption in our sector, we need not one, but multiple confidence building measures for our consumers. You need to make them feel that they are entering a safe place to eat. I was telling somebody else a couple of days back that I think in the new post-COVID era, the USP for any restaurant will not be its food or the restaurant design. It'll, for the time being, be how safe my restaurant is. And to do that, to give you some examples of what we are planning to do. Of course, tomorrow we are releasing our SOP, which is very detailed for our members. We have also made some very interesting videos because you don't expect every cook and cleaning staff to read your manual. So we have made bilingual, multilingual, in fact, instructions on a video, which is easy for people to understand. If you tell a guy who is doing kitchen stewarding or cleaning that usko nahi chuna hai, wo samajh jayega. But if you put it in a writing in a SOP, he will never read it. It's beyond him. So then, for building consumers, something like doing mass testing for all the employees in your restaurant and putting the results on the front desk to tell you that we are very, very, careful about your health and our health. Here is the result of the people who are working. Only if one block sample has one positive result, then you can carry out individual tests for those people. So things like this, and I think we also need to understand that if people are not willing to come out to your restaurant for various reasons, because the number of touch points is a lot. From the time you leave your house to touch your lift to car to coming into a public space, maybe we need to do something else to reach out to people. And that is why, things like DIY meals, where you get meals of your favorite restaurant exactly the way it is supposed to be. It's just that you finish them yourself at home. I personally also feel, and it's already started to happen, that every elite restaurant will also start doing deliveries. Five-star hotels have already started doing it. I was reading news article. And where is this coming from? From a very simple fact that if trust is the main thing for a consumer to decide where to order from, I think they rather order from a place they know of than from some ghost kitchen which is stuck somewhere behind the beyond. So I think these are a few things. And in the meanwhile, to remain afloat, of course, I mean, we have discussed this a few days ago, so I know I'll be sounding a bit repetitive on that. But things like Rise for Restaurants, wherein we told our consumers that you can buy our food vouchers for your favorite restaurants at a discounted price and pay only a fraction of that today. And that fraction can go out right now to help my employees, and their kitchen fires can be kept burning. So stuff like that. There are many things. I think one of the biggest challenge that we are foreseeing is how to receive and treat the raw materials at every restaurant. And to give you a sense, I mean, today in every household, when a packet of milk or a tray of eggs come, I think it goes through a complete process before it is put to use. Now imagine in a restaurant, you have thousands of such SKUs. How do you deal with it? So we are. In fact, this SOP, it's almost 100-page, honestly, which I doubt anybody will read. It covers all these things. We are also trying to partner with various state governments in ensuring that we are together in forming the guidelines, which are not only safe but they are also practical. Like I was telling, matlab, ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए that when people are coming back to my restaurant, they should feel safe without feeling scared. That's very
Right.
important.
Right. And Anurag, if I can interrupt you, you have a delivery app also in the works, right?
Yeah, that's right. We have already started something which is digital ordering and bill settlement to reduce the human touch, because a menu card is touched by many people. So this is all you need in a restaurant now is a phone with a camera. You just scan a QR code, the whole menu populates there. You order directly, or you can look at it as a menu and order with the guy, your order taker. And at the time of bill settlement, you don't need to touch your EDC machine. Just make the payment online there and then. So these are some of the things that we are doing. We have to reduce the touch point, and we have to give a sense to people that they are entering a safe place for dining. I think sorry, did I
Yeah.
lose something
No,
here?
it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Your audio was
Okay.
visible. Okay. Great. So let me come to Ms. Sinha then. A lot of what is being done by these micro entrepreneurs now are, have been done quite fast in the normal scheme of things. Before your bank makes a lending decision, probably. But since everything is happening so fast and at a constrained time frame, have you been able to go through your checks and balances? Do you think the investments that you've made are solid ones?
So, as far as I would like to talk about the two type of investment. One is that you invest in capacity building, you invest in HR, you invest in them. And in fact, I would just give you another example again, a narrative that when people have changed their habits, as everybody is saying that, for consumption also. And we saw that with our women entrepreneurs, that some of our women who are farmers, they started thinking that a lot of people are consuming ginger, a lot of people are consuming haldi. And these women who are producing haldi, and ginger, we actually started a virtual training program for these women that they can produce a haldi and ginger. And we get the, because there is so much demand for that. And once the client know that you are going to get a haldi and ginger directly from farm to your house, they are going to buy it. And so the first investment actually I feel is very, very important, and that is, invest in the capacity building of the women entrepreneurs. And we did that. And secondly, then we, with all our women, we provided the machinery on loan, that, you take a loan, you buy a machinery, and you make this haldi with a proper guidelines. And they did it. And then the third was about marketing these to the household directly. So that's how, on one side, you invest in people, on the other side, you equip them with the technology, particularly women. It's not, people don't invest in them, and then provide them finance. It's not that if you give the loans to women through the bank also, but if their businesses are not going to happen, you are not going to get the repayment. So that investment, and I'm very proud to share with you that during lockdown, every day, nearly more than hundreds of women are coming to the, and as banks are opened, it's an essential service. And it's in village like Maswad, if you come to a bank, other banks there is nobody there, but here we have so many women coming to it. So this is the, you have to build the whole chain. So that is one. Now I'm talking about the investment as a, like, a small bank like us, where are we investing, or where are we maintaining our CRR and cash reserve ratios and all that. So if you are asking that, then one would say that, markets are very different. You can see that what is happening. The only two things are there, which is, one is of course bonds, and then other is that gold. I mean, these are the two things which are coming up. And I would just like to say that it's not only that banks are investing that way, but even women are so wise to do that. And I would like to share with you that since last since the lockdown, every day we get women coming to the bank and taking the gold loans. And all these small businesses, these people, those who are street vendors, they don't have registered company, they don't have any structured things where they would get a equity or something. Government is talking about a lot about these equity guarantee scheme, particularly this guarantee fund has been declared for the MSME sector, right, Minister? I mean, you had an interview with the Honorable Minister Nitin Gadkari, and in fact, we have made a representation that is great. But in this country, more than 30-40% of people are in informal economy. They don't have any structure. They don't have any companies. And banks, are banks ready to lend them? That is one. And if banks will not lend them, then they will end up going to the very high cost loan. And so I feel that it is very important that when it comes to the investment has to be done with the government, because all these businesses people are doing on the road, on the street, farmers, there has to be a risk sharing. And how much government is coming forward to share the risk? And it's not, I mean, if we see otherwise also, that poor people, they take loan, they repay with high interest. But you don't, you see NPAs are with very different people. I am not going to talk
Right,
about that
right,
also, right? So,
right.
but we have, I mean, I'm proud to say that our women paid the loan in time, they set up the business, and they not only, they create the jobs. I am so proud to share with you that women, those who are making haldi and ginger powder, each woman is creating at least, giving a job to at least 9 to 10 women. And so they are actually not only job seekers, but they are job creators. So I feel in this situation, the most important part is that, I mean, what I learned from some of our tribal women during the lockdown, they decided that we will in community decide that nobody will sleep with empty stomach.
Right.
and we'll feed
Listen,
them.
yes, I think it's commendable that, what's happening despite, the challenges. Uh, Tanvi, if I can come to you, uh, a lot of what you're doing now has, in a way, flowed out of what's happened in the last 2.5, 3 months. How much of it will actually go on to become permanent, say, products? You're doing masks, you're doing a new line of wearing. Uh, how much of it do you think is just short term, and how much of it do you think you can actually include in your business?
Okay, so I think the fundamental the longevity of fashion brands comes when they are extremely reactive to social, economic stimuli, right, at a cultural level. So, regardless of how much of this is long term or short term, I think the onus will be always for us to act very fast uh, and pick up on consumption trends as before they hit their peak. That's the hallmark of a good fashion brand, of a good lifestyle brand. But to answer your question specifically, fashion masks, or masks that are going to be about expression and about individuality, is going to be an accessory that we in the fashion industry see as a fairly long term accessory. One, till there is a vaccine, because some semblance of physical interaction, of traveling, and all of those things need to come back, right? So all of this has to come back, and masks are going to be your primary defense. So it becomes an accessory, and with every accessory there is a personality, there is an individuality, there is a statement to be made, and masks would be one. And even in the long term, given that like our generation will have fears that will have certain fears that will probably certain scars that will stay with us for a very long time. I definitely see that like we'll all be taking to wearing masks and other things when we are out, like in alien situations, like where you don't fully have control on others.
Plus, we have pollution always.
Yes, yes. I mean, come on, India, right? So masks, definitely, I think that's a way of being now. It's sure it'll go through a surge, and then it'll normalize once COVID, or at least the first wave of COVID is over. The other bit, which is on categories such as loungewear, such as comfort wear, such as I think that's something that we would need to focus on from a 9 to 12 month point of view, because here again, one can only refer to historical events to give a sense of perspective on how things will be. It's just that, like, say, when World War II happened, or when 9/11 happened in America, after that, after the first, burst of fear and anxiety was over, fashion became more flamboyant. Fashion became more, there were more colors, there was more, happiness to radiate, and there was more, sort of um, display in a sense, right? So right, I think from a 9 to 12 months focus, we'll definitely be looking at doing and refining this whole slow fashion, comfort conscious, mindful consumption, and then see as it comes, because our sense is that once this fear subsides, there's just going to be so much more buoyancy in the market, and people will want to express themselves with things that are more out there as well, and we need to be there to pick up on that. I actually wanted to also, also talk about some things that Miss Sinha spoke about. The other thing that I think that we, all of us, consciously realized, people that are, in typically in capitalist industries, is that we need to be extremely mindful about the gaps, the privilege and the lack of privilege, right? I mean, you saw the plight of migrant laborers. We saw how the rural population was struggling, where there was grain that was wasted and people could not get their rations. And I think that is something that all companies which have startup corporate world have realized, that we have a responsibility that goes far, far beyond, uh, responsibility to our investors and, delivering on bottom line and top line. So we've also done a mass donation drive, and we continue to do that. We've worked with various NGOs to provide rations for uh, needy families. We've donated to PM. We've raised money for PM Relief and PM Cares Fund. All of these things, and I think that we are not exceptions. We are actually going to become the rule, that more and more companies will need to wake up to this entire thought that we need to make our nation prosper, not just our immediate ecosystem.
Right.
And lastly, I know I've taken a lot of the time, but lastly, I think that online shopping and online adoption, that's not going to change. That's not short term. It was always on the wings. It has been on the wings for the last couple of years. I have personally been always bullish about it, but just the convenience and the ease of trying at home in your comfort zone, returning, all of that, it's just not going to go away anytime soon. And I think COVID has ushered in the era of online shopping and online consumption formally.
But Sanjay, if I can come to you, how much of what you are doing actually will result into sales? I gather from what you said earlier, some of them were process changes, which may lead to reduction in costs and stuff like that. How much of what you are doing will actually lead to sales?
Now that's an interesting question, Pran. But I think the first and foremost thing that it is that all these innovations and changes are doing is to basically keep us afloat. I mean, to keep the business going. This is not going to, none of these immediately is going to lead to any growth in the business, but importantly, they will keep the businesses running. I mean, this innovation, this rethink of processes is very important, because if we don't do that, I think then to stay alive in business is difficult. There is in this discussion that as an MSME, we have a lot of new opportunity which is becoming available primarily due to the anti-publicity that got created due to the origin of the coronavirus from Wuhan, and the general thought going around, whether it is in Europe or in the US, of shifting business out of China is presenting an opportunity which we as a country really need to strive and cash on. This is obviously a discussion, which we are all having at various forums, and I think the government today is very, very focused on trying to help the industry on capitalizing on this. And but I think this is really, I don't want to get too much deeper into that today, but I think this is a very core issue that can be a very positive situation in the current scenario. And if we are to capitalize on this, if we are to encash this correctly, I see no reason why each and every MSME in the country does not grow. I mean, a major deterrent to the growth of MSMEs was the the limits fixed on MSME, which has been corrected now, and I think there is an automatic scope for MSMEs to grow now. This is also, I would like to say that this is a time that we need to be extremely flexible in our thoughts in how we are doing things. You see, I mean, SOPs, which were absolutely our Bible until a couple of months back, do not have any meaning today. You see, we have to have new SOPs, as Anurag just mentioned. You see, the SOPs created by them for the restaurant industry is similar things that we are all trying to do on uh, uh, within our own industries also at the same time. So I think the idea is that yes, with all these changes, with all the opportunities that are becoming available, eventually this will lead to a growth in our businesses. It will lead to eventual increase in sales. Um and I think, as I've been trying to say all along, I am extremely positive, and I hope that that we all do stay that way, and and get out of this little problem, that little whatever this problem situation that we are in right now.
Wonderful. Anurag, I will come to you and let you have the last word. What does the pandemic do to the nature of business that restaurants have? Has it, added fuel to some of the changes which may have been pending for a long time?
You need to unmute.
Anurag, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I was talking to myself. Okay. No, I was saying, while pandemic has really caused a problem of unprecedented size. I mean, we have never faced something like this. I also believe that with every crisis comes an opportunity, and this is perhaps that time for us. And I think one of the biggest changes that we will see is the change in the business model of the traditionally is a very high risk model because our proportion of fixed operating expenses are very high. Things are changing. Now I see in every group, everyone is talking about revenue share model rather than fixed rental model. Everybody is talking about cutting down on the frills. These are music to my ears. I've gone hoarse talking about these things for last few years. And everybody said we are in show business and we need to show off. And I think that is one of the biggest changes that has come. Like what Tanvi was saying, there will be some shift towards online consumption, and that is where I see an opportunity, but also a threat, because right now the e-commerce policy is not very clear, and I think that is what the government is looking to work at right now. I think a group of secretaries have been formed to come up with a national e-commerce policy, because I'm very sure that an e-commerce policy which only helps a handful of aggregators and not lakhs of traders cannot be a good policy. We need a policy where aggregators are nothing but a neutral marketplace, online marketplace, and the buyer and seller should decide their terms of engagement independently, which is not the case today. So I see these things as opportunities. When the businesses go down, the one clear mantra is bring down your costs and expenses. And this is where, we have made constant appeal with the Honorable Finance Minister and the Prime Minister that at least in our sector, please bring back the input tax credit on GST, which is otherwise taking up our expenses, especially in large cities, by something as high as 10%. And our capital outlay for a new restaurant is going up by 20%. So these are the few things that we are looking to do. As I said, things are not very nice. We need to first figure out how to survive this phase. If we survive 2021 well, and we are still alive, then we can look at somehow reviving and thriving post that.
Wonderful. Great. I think that's all the time we have today, sadly. And the first modern day pandemic will surely define this era. And everyone who lives through these days will remember it and feel it throughout their life. For businesses, the sheer lack of resources and the need to make changes almost on the fly will lead to a different set of experiences and skills, one with a lot of grit, tenacity, and determination. There may be at least this one positive outcome. Uh, Thank you, Ms. Sinha, Tanvi, Jay, and Anurag for taking us through uh, all the innovations that you guys are doing. And I wish you luck. And I am all set to also welcome Meghna Surya Kumar. And thank you all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thanks.
you.
Thank
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 you.
you.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Big up. Welcome to this conversation. And wonderful, wonderful to have you, Meghna.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. So we had a very interesting discussion on, the kind of innovations companies have been doing, and one of the areas where a lot of businesses find issue now is around fundraising. And it's good to have you here. Meghna Surya Kumar, viewers, is the CEO of CreditWatch. CreditWatch is an AI-based insights service platform which provides credit intelligence and actionable insights to financial institutions, corporates, professional services firms, and MSMEs. So, Meghna, let me come to you first. What is it that you are seeing in terms of borrowing and lending? Uh, why I ask this question is because what worked previously may not necessarily work now. So, like we had the gentleman from the Restaurant Association, you might have a very good restaurant margin. Suddenly, that might not be a good business opportunity at the moment. So, what is it that both borrowers and lenders need to keep in mind now?
Sure. So let me just spend a few minutes talking about what was the problems with MSME before COVID, and how these problems have kind of enhanced post COVID with respect to financing. Right.
Right.
Pre-COVID, if you looked at the MSMEs, right, we have close to 50 to 60 million MSMEs who contributed to close to 30 to 35% of our GDP. Right, they had three or four big problems at that point. Access to financing. Only 15% of these MSMEs had access to formal financing pre-COVID, right? Access to information. There was not enough resources for anybody to kind of understand the sector, right? The last census we had on MSMEs was in 2006, 2007. So there's a real lack of information either available to the policymakers about MSMEs themselves, or the MSMEs per se, to understand what is going on in terms of how they can position their business, right? You also needed skilling and upskilling and a lot of training that was required for a lot of the MSMEs, right? So, and then access to customers, access to trade. So these were like the top 4 or 5 problems that they faced prior to COVID. And what has happened with COVID is, the demand has fallen a little bit, which means that now MSMEs are facing a drop in demand, which is kind of affecting their business. And second is the fact that they already had a problem with access to finance that has kind of really amplified during COVID. Now, the government has been trying to do things by coming up with policy and framework. Like one of the gentlemen earlier in the panel just now talked about how we have the 3 lakh crore as a loan scheme for SMEs that gives them, collateral-free loans, right? So the thing with that is, there are existing 45 million units in India, right? And now there are units with 1 crore revenue and up to 250 crore revenue, which has, the new definition has enhanced the definition of MSMEs. Now, the 3 lakh crore collateral free debt is not going to be given as a fresh loan to anybody.
Yes.
All existing bank customers will just get a 20% upside on their existing working capital facilities without any additional paperwork. So
Right.
from that perspective, it's not really solved the problem we already had in terms of lack of finance, right? And it's not solving the problem for many MSMEs who are not a part of the system. So those stressed MSMEs who really were struggling were already a part of the system, with the banks and NBFCs would get access to this. But those who are not a part of the system, like Ms. Chetna was talking about how there are a lot of MSMEs in the unorganized sector, right, when she was speaking. So that problem is not yet solved. So the problem is really kind of amplified by COVID. And we kind of really need to look at how do you solidify the MSMEs, and that should be the approach of the government. So the first thing comes with digitization, right? Digitization has transformed many industries. Digitization has transformed different kinds of, government initiatives also, right? Digitization's added a lot of value. So the need of the hour is to digitize, to bring those crores of unorganized companies, businesses who are not registered as formal companies into the digital space. I think that's the first problem that we would need to solve collectively as the industry and also as the government. And if you see in the past 3-4 months, there's been a lot of venture financing activities. There's a business called Khata Book that just raised $60 million, and they're digitizing the Udhar or Khata Book of really small kirana stores and very, very small micro businesses, and they're digitizing them. And if you look at what businesses like Tally and QuickBooks and a lot of new accounting software, they're digitizing the accounting software, all the paperwork that smaller businesses do. So small businesses need to digitize, because if they digitize, then there's access to data. And this data is what's going to help the lender understand them better and give them more, credit and get more comfortable with them. And that's why essentially, companies like Credit Watch, we are in this, our mission statement for the past 3-4 years is to enable this digitization in the ecosystem, both at the banks end and both at the small businesses end. So we are focusing on how do you look at different forms of data sets that MSME deals with on a day-to-day basis, right? That would help a bank give him a better loan at a better rate. So digitization is the key. And digitization also would help businesses become more efficient. Like small businesses, if they understand at the rate at which they're collecting money from their customers and which customers are paying them late, who are paying them early, they can organize themselves better, right? If they understand the pattern in which the payments are coming, right, for some of the larger MSMEs. So digitization, treasury management, making all your books, completely go digital, accessing tools to collect money, like digital invoicing, automatically generating invoices instead of sending physical invoices to your customer today. So there's a lot of things that small businesses can do to increase efficiency in the way they collect money and the way they also operate with banks. And I feel like post-COVID, we would see a wave of companies and startups and initiatives even by the government to help small businesses get more digitized. And I think even the central government has launched a portal for MSME during the COVID period, where they're inviting a lot of people from the industry to come up with solutions specifically for small businesses.
Right. So when you talk about digitization, you did touch upon a few things like your books of accounts and stuff like that. Uh, but most MSMEs actually struggle. What are the parts that need to digitize so that uh, the loan, the borrowing process or getting a loan becomes easier? I mean, it cannot be just have a face, or
Right.
it cannot be just merely limited to digitize your account and hey, you will have it. So what
So if you look at COVID, right? What's important to business to digitize? Like the first gentleman with the restaurant was talking about how with their digitized menus at the restaurant, and they're making it a cardless process for payment. So every business there would be a unique touch point that's affected today by COVID that fundamentally cripples them to do the business that they're doing. So in terms of if a business has to choose what do I need to digitize today, you would have to look at you would have to look at what's directly having an impact on your revenue because of COVID, and that would be different for different businesses, right? For a shop, maybe they need digital collection of payment, and they need to get into e-commerce or tie up with e-commerce providers for delivery, because that customers may not be coming. Their footfall in your store may have actually fallen down, right? For a restaurant, it's digitization of the menu. It's tying up with delivery people to deliver food more at home, right? And it's digitization to ensure that when you're collecting money, people don't swipe their cards, because that also could cause spread of infection. So in each small business will have to look at that unique touch point that has the highest impact on its revenues, and that's the problem they need to solve first, in terms of how are you going to adopt technology to solve for that post COVID, right? Because they have to kind of reimagine their business. They have to become sturdier, right? So that's what we need to look at from the small businesses perspective. The government has to look at something larger. If all these businesses are going to digitize, we should reduce the cost of electricity, right? They need to make internet almost free. So from the government's perspective, to enable digitization, they have to focus on ensuring that the infrastructure required for these small businesses to get digitized needs to get cheaper and more easily available. So that's what we would need from the government's perspective.
Right, Meghna, those are interesting points. But what about GST? I mean, that's absolutely, on the digital world. What kind of impact is that making?
So GST actually has been a game changer in terms of digitizing businesses, because if you looked at an organized company, financials would be available once a year at least for a bank to take a call. But suppose you're an unorganized business, you're a proprietorship partnership, which is close to 70% of the small MSMEs in India, right? There would be no information available for a banker to judge how your business is doing. Now, with the GST filing, there's a regular digital trail for any business in India that's making at least 40 lakhs of revenue. So if it is for a bank, just looking at 3 to 6 months of your activity, your sales activity, because of your GST returns, can kind of give them comfort to give you a loan, right? Instead of just relying on last year's financials. Maybe you had a bad year last year, but your last 6 months has been great, and your GST returns validate that. That makes you more eligible for a loan, right? So from that perspective, I think the GST framework and the fact that it has to be mandatorily e-filed has actually been a very positive step in terms of digitizing a very crucial aspect of financial information regarding small businesses. But it only covers businesses that make more than 40 lakhs revenue. So we still have to look at solutions like the Khata book or, OK Credit and things like that for businesses that don't make that kind of revenue.
Right. You work closely with banks. What is their feedback, and financial institutes? What is their feedback on what's going on now? And do you think they think that MSMEs are lendable? You know, are they okay with funding MSMEs?
So banks would always want to acquire new customers, right? So the decision for them to lend or not to lend to a particular business or a sector rather is based on how risky it is for them to recover. Because the MSMEs were digitally very thin businesses, there's not enough data available, and there was a lot of risk associated with the sector being so informal. Banks were generally uncomfortable taking big bets or coming up with very structured products for the MSMEs, right? There's some very standard products that are available. Any MSME today can still get a loan by pledging his house. In fact, in that 15% in the RBI statistics of MSMEs who got a loan, 90% would have pledged some real property to get that loan. So so banks per se have been very hesitant always to give an unsecured loan to an MSME. Now, the only way they can become more comfortable to give an unsecured loan is to have more data. Why would a big corporation like a Reliance or a Tata get a huge 1,000 or 10,000 crore unsecured loan facility from a bank? Because they have a very thick file. And the amount of information available about these companies is enough for the banks to make an informed decision of how to lend to them. But if you look at a file of a small business, it's 1 to 2 pages. It's a very thin file, right? So from that perspective, they need some additional comfort to make that decision. So our endeavor now is to work with these small businesses to make them data rich. So if they become data rich like a larger company and more forms of alternative data, positive data about these businesses become a very more understandable fact to the banks, then they'll be more comfortable taking risk, right? For example, if you look at an industry like dairy, right? There are a lot of companies that are building IoT devices to digitize the entire dairy industry, right? Right from the IoT devices that's put on the cow to measure the output every day, to every aspect of the supply chain is digitized, to the end user, to the distributor. So if you have this kind of data available about the entire supply chain of the dairy, then a bank can then look at that whole industry as an end-to-end and offer loans and services to the farmer who has the cows, to the small business who's a distributor distributing the milk, to the larger, let's say retailers and retail chains, and all of them who are going to like big basket who will make that a product a part of their distribution, right? And even the larger stores, so they can fund the entire supply chain. So data will actually help you do that, because you know from the minute that you get a bottle of milk to what it goes to the end consumer, you have data. So the digitization can actually give these sort of benefits for banks to take a bigger call, because they'll know, okay, if this farmer is today eligible for 5 lakhs, if he has to become eligible for 10 lakhs, he needs 3 more cows. So let's fund him to get 3 more cows, because we know that the average throughput per cow is so much, right? And then we know that there's a demand on the other side, because we're looking at the consumption of milk and how many bottles are being built. So we know that if he invests in 3 more cows, somebody's going to buy the milk, right? So that is the way we have to use data to enable the MSMEs, right? It's not so, and not just the fact that they have a Khata book or not that they're getting tally. but we have to look at it from a holistic perspective. And this has to be a collaboration between the industry, because the industry should digitize what is really important for them, right? Where they're generating money. The farmer should put an IoT device on the cow, because that's why he's generating all the revenue. How many bottles of milk is he producing in a day, right? And if that data becomes available to the bank, that's going to help them.
Wonderful, wonderful, great. Last question to you would be, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed sectors, changed every businesses. What do you think will be the changes when it comes to borrowing and lending? Will they be permanent and here to stay? And what do you think will be the role of technology?
Yeah, hi. I think I lost you for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, I'll say so. So the pandemic has changed sectors, is changed businesses. What are the kind of changes that you think will be seen when it comes to borrowing and lending? And will that be there to stay, or do you think that'll be temporary? And what will be the role of technology from now on?
Sure. I mean, technology is going to play a very pivotal role in changing the lending industry as we see today, especially post-COVID, right? If you look at the entire life cycle of a loan, from the minute the relationship starts between a borrower and a bank, it's all very document data driven. Now, pre-COVID, maybe for smaller industries, it was smaller businesses, it was completely digitized. But if you look at the entire lending industry as a whole, a lot of these documents and information was collected manually. The bank credit officers would go visit the unit, inspect the factory, talk to the promoter, and then decide to give a loan. Now, in post-COVID, it's not possible for them to have that kind of a physical interaction because of the risk of, the infection. So we have to reimagine lending now. Not only do we have to scale lending because, not many businesses are getting a loan today, we have to reimagine it completely post-COVID. So technology is going to play that role, and government is heading in the right direction there. Recently, government has eased the guidelines for KYC, where they've accepted video KYC as the norm. So instead of visiting the factory, you could do a conference call and look at the factory and talk to the borrower directly on a conference call, and it might aid you giving a loan faster. Then maybe you would have had to travel to another city to, if you're a state bank sitting in Mumbai, you may have had to go to a local small town to actually look at what's happening there to issue that loan, right? So from that perspective, technology is going to kind of really bring in a transformational change, especially in terms of this touch point of starting the relationship between the borrower and the lender. Second is in terms of credit processes themselves. Now we know that with the new schemes, the number of MSMEs have doubled or tripled, right? From 25 crores, it's 250 crores. So but the number of bankers have not increased. 3 months ago, how many banks and how many bankers we have, they have not changed. So from that perspective, how are they going to give more loans? How are they going to give it faster? So they have to adopt a technology to scale. And banks have to become nimble, because the entire distribution of the customers are with the banks, right? The newer forms of distributions are just emerging now, where you have the online platforms, digital lenders, even other kinds of SME platforms that have a small amount of MSMEs as a part of the ecosystem. But still 85% of the distribution is still in the hands of all the banks, especially the state banks and the public sector undertaking. Because if we did a survey and we found out that most of the MSMEs and SMEs still prefer to go with a bank. They trust banks, right? And while about 20-30% are looking at the new kinds of lenders and the NBFCs, majority of them still prefer a bank relationships. So that because the distribution is with a bank today, the majority of the distribution of where these 50-60 lakh companies have access to and they trust and they operate. I think digitizing the bank is actually going to be one of the biggest game changers to solving the problem. That bank themselves should adopt to AI, they should adopt to technology, and they should have these neo-bank kind of neo-capabilities that the new age tech companies have. So what we will see in the next few months is a very interesting partnership where a lot of fintechs will stand behind the banks and help them, offer what they have as tech to their banks and consumers, right? And these are going to be very, very game-changing, interesting partnerships, because banks would then have, the neobank kind of capabilities, and that's what I see as an emerging business model. On the other hand, when we look at companies like Facebook investing in Geo, We also, and like companies like Google, Amazon. Google has just come out with Google Pay, right? Facebook has WhatsApp Pay, and Amazon is now trying to get into financial services. They have a lot of their own apps, right? In terms of like Amazon Pay. So we have a lot of technology giants who have hundreds of millions of consumers and SMEs as their customers trying to get into financial services. So these are the two very interesting ways I think that there would be a competition to enable access and digitize financial services, especially for all. And I think both these business models are very beneficial because the SMEs and the MSMEs will stand to benefit from both things happening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Meghna, for putting across very interesting points and giving a fresh perspective on what may happen on the lending side and what needs to happen on the borrowing side. I think change is the only constant at the moment, and technology is going to drive that change. So, thank you for taking us through those very interesting points that you had, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
And thank you, our viewers. We hope you've liked what we put up. We wanted to show that there is still positivity in the air, and despite all the challenges, there are people who are trying to make it happen, and they've succeeded. And again, on the second part of it, as Meghna has put it, technology might be the savior for us. So thank you all for joining. Thank you, Meghna, once again.
Thank you.